Right, folks, here we are, and we're finished. It had to happen someday, hadn't it? And the reason we know we're finished is because it's been signed on the bottom. That's the last thing you do. So, the big problem, not the problem, the big issue was how to finish the top off. I sent the lady getting this a couple of images, and she liked the style of the urns that I sent, but she asked that the top wouldn't be as big and heavy as the ones I sent. So I've done a couple of different tops here and let you see them in what in my order of preference. Okay, there's three here. I'm going to send all three down with this, and this lady can take her time deciding which one she wants. So this is the first one. This is walnut. This is American walnut, and it finishes up really nicely. And that's it. That's the effect you get with it there. So I'll bring the camera over just to let you see what it looks like in position. So you can see there, it sits fairly low on it, and it's very unobtrusive. You know. I'm trying to get this back to where it was. Okay, so that's that one done. And then the next one is mahogany. There's a wee tiny bit of play here. We're only talking about a couple of mil, but you have to have somewhere for the glue to go. So if you put them in real tight, there's two things can happen. The glue won't go in properly, but also the plug can swell, and it'll swell and maybe crack the neck. It's very unlikely, but I'm making sure it doesn't happen. So the next one I did was slightly bigger to pick up some of the features on the actual urn, like the coves and that there. So my wife thought that one was nice. I'll let you see what that one's like close up. Once again, that's just ordinary humble mahogany, and I showed you the piece of an old door that a neighbour gave me from his house that he was renovating many years ago, and I've done quite a few wee projects out of it. I made him a bowl out of it. I made him a segmented bowl out of the door. The surround. He gave me the whole surround for the door. But really, you want to see the amount of wood was in it. It was really good quality stuff because it was put in the house when it was built about 100 years ago. So the wood is really, really good quality, you know. So that's that. So this is the one I think I like the best. And this is once again mahogany. Oh, hold on. I think it's American walnut with African blackwood and a wee finial on the top of it. So I'll just bring you in to see that a bit closer. So that's what we have, folks. And I'll send those down to where it's going, and my friend can decide what she wants to do. And if she doesn't like, if I can talk to her directly. If you don't like any of those, I'll make other ones. Just tell me now, and I'll try another few. There's about an hour in each one of those there. Well, there's about 2 hours in this one, but there's about an hour in each of the others, because you're doing two things. You're turning on the lathe, but then you're turning it back on itself, but you have to set it up in such a way that the chuck will hold it square. So this tin here, even though it's waste and that's going in to plug a hole, that has to be absolutely perfectly square, and this has to be completely parallel, so the jaws will grab it. You can actually see the wee line on this where the jaws did grab it, you know, and the same on this one here. You can see the wee line in that one where the jaws grabbed the chuck, grabbed this, so I could turn it round in the jaws and put it in so that I could work on the front of it then, you see. So you're doing two, you're working at both ends of the blank basically, you know. So that's that. So the other wee thing I'm going to include here is a piece of this velvet. It's red velvet, and it's a very dark velvet. I haven't got black. I have got black, but I can't find it. But it's very easy bought. So if you like that effect, I'm going to send that down, and I will let you decide whether you want to put it on or not. Okay, so that's going down with it. And also I'm going to send you the wood glue that I would recommend for this, because it's a very good glue. Do not use Titebond 1, because Titebond 1 is a super glue, but it goes off far too fast. Titebond 2 or 3 are far better. But the stuff I send you down will be better than both of those, I think. So I include that in the package as well, so you don't have to worry about going to get glue or anything else, you know. How many hours? My goodness, I did a bit of counting up there. There's me tally as I was going along there. So the number of hours, 37.5 hours, right? Now that 37.5 hours is just the actual cutting time. that wasn't all the setup time and everything else. But that was cutting time and the polishing time and sanding, which was the sanding I needed to do to get the surface right. But then there's another 18.5 hours in there of sanding and polishing that I did that didn't need to be done, but I wanted to do to make sure this was as perfect as I could get it. So that's just, by the way, we can't take this into account because it wasn't necessary. But I felt it was necessary to get the very best I could get out of this piece of wood. So I put that in as well. So 37.5 hours, you could say. I would say if you were doing, I'm going to take 5 hours off that, because out of that 37, 5 hours of that would have been 7. Oh, hold on, I'll put the camera up where you can actually see me. I'm going to have to drop the legs here a second, folks. You just give me a wee second and I'll just do this here, because the legs are all, I had to lower the camera to get that shot there, you see. Oh, what do you see? Are you seeing anything there? I don't know what's going on here. Oh, I'm holding the wrong piece. Right. Oh, I'm way up in the air now. Turn this round and then I'll bring myself down a bit. That's about the right height now. And I'll just move this. Just move this here. And bring myself back a bit. Ooh, scary all there. Right. So, I'm saying I'm going 37.5 hours, what the actual cutting and sanding time wasn't that. But I'm taking 5 hours off that. I'm trying to estimate for doing any more, whatever I do. And I'm going to 32. I would say 30 hours would allow for the work. Now, that 30 hours is just your cutting, well, setting up your blank and all that sort of stuff, you know. You're not cutting all the time. And sanding and prepping wood and stuff. But there's a lot of time in that where you're doing nothing on the wood because you're allowing the wood to settle. Because of this blank, I was so nervous about this blank, I let it sit for a day before I cut it again. And then I'd take another cut at it and then let it sit for another day. Something that you wouldn't normally do, but this is my last chance. This is the only blank I had left. I think I lost 5 blanks doing this project. But they were splitting and they weren't suitable, and one of them had a big hole in the middle of it. So this was my last chance with a piece of dry wood. So I was just making sure everything went okay. So I put more time into the actual preparation and the bits in between the cutting. So there's a lot of time in between where there were days where I went from one job to the next on this, which would normally be an hour, but there would be a day or a day and a half for me to allow the wood to stabilize again. What it meant was whenever I put the lid back on again, this is what you can see here. I'll just lift this carefully. You can see where I put the lid on. That's where I cut the lid there. Well, when I put that back on, that just fitted in just like a hand and a glove. It was no movement at all because I went so slow. And then I cut this second line to distract your eye from this line, so it looks more like a design feature. So so because it cut so slow, it meant that everything went together really well. So it was well worth doing, you know. But it took a lot of time, you know. So the next one, I reckon the next one, you could set out 30 hours and you'd probably do it in 25 or 26 hours if you got a real good run on it. Now, if you had wet wood or something, there's no way you're going to do it. It's going to take you maybe 8 months or a year to finish a blank like that. By the time it dries naturally and stuff, you would cut part of it and then dry it and then finish it off. And it takes about a year probably to do that, you know. But if you were starting with a dry blank, I would say you could set 25 to 30 hours would get you to the finished product. And like what we have here, you know. So it wasn't too far out. I have about 37.5, 38 hours and that. But that's because a lot of the work, I was using the new tools that I hadn't used before, so I was learning how to use them. So that's time, that's my time, you know, that's not time for the job. But I'm trying to work out, I'm trying to give you an idea of how many hours in it. So I'm saying 32.5. We'll go for 30 hours, say 30, 32 hours, you know, and that'll be a fair representation. And that takes in all the cutting and sanding. Now, the other big thing was sandpaper. There's a lot of sandpaper in this because you see this here, there's a piece of 120 there, right? Once you use that once, now the wood turners need to listen to this. Once I use that once, it's useless. It's not 120 anymore, it's used 120. 120 is to do the grit count. The next grit I use will be 180. Which is a finer grit. Now, some people will tell you that if you start off with a piece of 80 grit and use it once or twice, that becomes a 120, and then you use it again and it becomes a 180 and then use it again, it becomes a 240, 320, 400, 600. That's a load of crap. It becomes an old useless piece of sandpaper. So once you use this once, you take it and you throw it in the bin. It's a hard lesson to learn at the start, but when you do learn it, you find things work a lot better, because if you're trying to sand with old sandpaper, it's not even. So you're getting an uneven surface, and you're trying to sand make an even surface with an uneven tool. That's a tool. So the tool's not right, it's not sharp. It's like you're trying to cut with a blunt gouge. So if you are, I'm looking at I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at the screen here. If you're doing any sanding, use the paper once, throw it away. That's the rule. So there's a lot of sandpaper not there. That was probably the biggest thing of all. Wax, not a whole lot of wax, because I don't put a lot of wax on. Wax is less is more. The more you put on, the more you have to wipe off, and you end up with all the surplus wax in your cloth, you know. So I don't put on very much at all, and I always have enough on. You can see it out there, it's beautiful. So it's okay. Sanding sealer, not a whole lot of sanding sealer, maybe, oh God, maybe 50 mils, 150 mils of sanding sealer, not a whole lot of that. So the consumables were not that expensive. The only expense was sandpaper, you know, but that's always an expense, you know. And then you've got your electricity and your wear and tear. Now, that's just by the way thing. I'm not going to consider that at all, you know, because I was learning stuff here. So there's a certain amount of, I have to pay for knowledge as well, you know. So that's basically it. So my rough idea, 30 hours, with 25, 30 hours. Now, guys who make earns for a living are probably laughing at me, thinking I could never make a living doing that by selling one urn. But, you know, I'm only an amateur, you know. I've never done this before. But I would do another one. I would definitely do another one, and I would do it a lot faster. Not that much faster, but I wouldn't have that extra 5 hours of setup time and learning the tools, and I wouldn't have as much sanding to do, because I learned a lot when I was sanding that big piece, so I wouldn't have as much sanding to do next time, and I know where to go, how to get a good result quicker, you know. And that's how you learn, you know. So all in all, I enjoyed this process. It was scary at times. It was very scary at times, but I enjoyed it, and what do you call it? I'm going to do another one. You know, I've got a big piece of larch. I think with another piece of larch down in the shed, and I've got a friend that's taken a larch tree down a while ago, so I can get more larch. So I'm going to get some of that and start prepping it as well, you know. So that's where we are, folks. So I hope that my friend likes this, and I will pack this off later on in the week. I'm not going to put this on. I'm not going to put the velvet on the bottom of it. I will leave that for you to do, because I don't know what you want. I just left the bottom. I just sealed the bottom of it. I just sealed that because I didn't put wax on it, because sometimes you put wax on, it will react with another surface. For instance, just for your own sake, guys, do not put anything with oil on a French polished dresser. If you give somebody a bowl that you've put oil on, tell them not to put it on a French dresser, because the oil will eat straight through the French polish, and you'll be very unpopular, you know. So what I do is, with something that gets here, I don't know what surface it's going to go on, but I just leave it where it's sealed, but there's nothing chemically on it, so it's not going to damage the surface it's on. And then if you do this here, well, that's 100% guaranteed there's going to be no damage done to the surface it's sitting on. The only thing I would advise was, don't put that in a window or beside a fireplace. Keep it somewhere away from direct heat and away from direct sunshine. It will get darker with age. All wood gets darker with age, but that's fairly light, so it'll be a brave while before it's dark. It'll be years like before it's dark, you know. But keeping it out of the light will help that, you know. But that's where we are. So thanks for following along, folks. I really appreciate all the advice and the comments throughout this thing, because I learned a whole lot, and I learned a lot from you, which I very much appreciate. So the next one won't be as long. Okay, all the best now. Bye bye.